Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, text number 24. Brahmarpanam Brahmahaivir Brahmagno Brahmahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina Brahmarpanam Brahmahaivir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Pranam Brahmahaivir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Brahmarpanam Brahmahaivira Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Mataji. Brahmarpanam Brahmahaivira Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. Brahma, spiritual in nature. Arpanam, contribution. Brahma, the supreme. Havi, butter. Brahma, spiritual. Agno, in the fire of consummation. Brahmana, by the spirit soul. Hutam, offered. Brahma, spiritual kingdom. Eva, certainly. Tena, by him. Gantavyam, to be reached. Brahma, spiritual. Karma, in activities. Samadhina, by complete absorption. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to obtain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is the same spiritual nature. Please repeat. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to obtain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute, and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Purport. How activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul entangled in material contamination is sure to act in the spiritual atmosphere, and yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness, as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yagya, or activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness, or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahman means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahmajyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahmajyoti. But when the Jyotir is covered by illusion, Maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor and the result are all combined together, Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth covered by Maya is called matter. Matter dovetailed for the cause of the Absolute Truth regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yagya, or a sacrifice for the Absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. Brahmarpanam Brahmahaivir Brahmagno Brahmahutam Brahmaiva Tena Kantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina. Person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is the same spiritual nature. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Siddharane. Here it explains that Krishna consciousness is our original consciousness, and that presently our original consciousness is covered over by an artificial consciousness called Maya. And the process of Krishna consciousness is simply to come back to our original consciousness. And the process is simple. It's called yagya. As explained in another verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Chetasa sarva karmani maya sanyasya matparaha buddhiyogam upashitya machita sadatam bhava. Then all activities depend upon me, Krishna says, and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, just be fully conscious of me. In other words, our sambandha, or the knowledge we're seeking after, is simply to understand that everything here belongs to Krishna. Then one understands the sambandha. Simple. And the abhideya, or what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to inquire from Krishna or from his representatives what we're supposed to do. We have not necessarily, in our conditioned state, we have to find out basically, maybe not exactly the activity, but at least the consciousness in which we should do something, but also the activity. That's called Abhideya. And that's Guru Sadhana Shastra, or as Prabhupada writes, that if Krishna is not present, because Krishna is present on the battlefield when Arjuna was wondering what to do, and Krishna was able to directly instruct him. But if Krishna is not present, then how should we act? So Prabhupada says that if one acts according to the direction of Krishna in this book, as well as under the direction of the representative of Krishna, then the result will be the same. Just like Prabhupada was asked that if you're not present, then how will your disciples know what they have to do to please you? So Prabhupada said that even if I'm not present, my representatives are present. The GBC is present, the Temple is present. So if you please them, and Prabhupada is asking us to follow the representatives of him, then Prabhupada becomes pleased. Not very difficult to understand that. So one has to follow Krishna's direction in the book. So we have to read Prabhupada's books. In other words, without reading Prabhupada's books, then how will we know what Krishna wants us to do? And if we don't know what Krishna wants us to do, then if someone asks us to do something, how will we know that that's also what Krishna wants us to do? Now the difference is, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, it doesn't tell us exactly what we're supposed to do. I don't think anyone who reads Bhagavad Gita finds out they should be a cook, or they should be a singer, or they play the piano. Krishna talks in general about the quality of our work, and he also talks something about the different possibilities under the modes of nature for the Brahmins and Kshatriyas, what their qualities are, and for the Vaishyas and Shudras, what their specific activities should be. Therefore, one needs some representative of Krishna, otherwise how can you be a servant? If our aim is to develop a service attitude, you have to have someone to serve. Because everyone who's come to the material world didn't come here to become a servant. We came here to be the master. And we're having a very hard time doing that. So if one wants to become a servant of Krishna, not just an ordinary servant, then one has to find out what Krishna wants us to do. In other words, we have to serve either Krishna directly or a representative of Krishna. So if someone gives us instruction, we shouldn't think, well, that's very bad, they're trying to control me. We should think that's very good. Finally, someone's going to control me, control my uncontrolled mind. Then one can actually make advancement. But that's not all. Krishna doesn't need our service. Like, for instance, when we offer halava or prasadam to the deities, it's not that Krishna needs our halava. Prabhupada, when he was installing Rukmini Dwarkadish, actually Rukmini Dwarkanath in Los Angeles, he was talking about how Krishna doesn't need our fruity halava. At that time, the devotees, their only sweet that they had practically, besides simply wonderfuls, was halava. Every morning the devotees would have halava. They called it heavenly porridge sometimes. That was that oatmeal. But sometimes they get halava, sweetie halava, and it was especially valuable if they put raisins in it. Prabhupada liked golden raisins. He didn't like the black ones very much. Anyhow, Prabhupada said that Krishna, when he was installing Rukmini Dwarkanath, he said, Krishna doesn't need your fruity halava. He didn't leave the spiritual world to come here to our temple to get some halava. He has plenty of cooks in the spiritual world. But then Prabhupada started to mention about Vamsidas Babaji. Vamsidas Babaji was in the mood of Vatsalya Rasa. But then Prabhupada decided not to talk about Vamsidas. He talked about Sanatana Goswami, that he was hanging, Madan Mohan was in a tree. And, well, as the story goes before, that there was one Brahmin, he had Madan Mohan as a deity in his house. This is in Vrindavan 500 years ago. And he used to treat the deity like his child, like his own son. And not only that, but the deity reciprocated, and sometimes he'd go outside and play with this Brahmin's children. Nice relationship with the deity. But one day he had a dream, and the deity came to him, this Brahmin, and said, tomorrow one mendicant is going to come, Sanatana Goswami, and you should give me to him, because he doesn't have anyone to live with. You have children, he has no one, so you should go with him. So the deity agreed, the Brahmin agreed. So the next day Sanatana Goswami was doing Madhukari, and he came to the house of the Brahmin, and the Brahmin said, well, I have something to give you. This is Madan Mohan, I'd like to introduce you to him, and he would like to live with you. But Sanatana Goswami said, well, actually, I don't really have a very nice place to put him. He said, no, the deity is very tolerant. He'll appreciate any altar you give him. So he said, all right. And he brought him to where he was living. Sanatana Goswami was living underneath the tree. And he put Madan Mohan on a branch. And time went on, Madan Mohan was sitting on the branch, but the only prasadam that Sanatana Goswami was offering to him was a roti. At that time, the rotis were not like the thick chapatis with ghee on them. They'd take some flour and they'd smash it up, add some water and make a ball out of it, and throw it into a fire. So it was half cooked on one side and half raw on the other side. So after some time, Madan Mohan, that's all he got to eat, a little bit of a lesser quality than the Brahma's house, where he got kachoris and samosas and gulab jamins, and now he's eating a half-cooked roti. So then he started to complain. He said, Sanatana Goswami, he said, can't you even give me a little salt with the roti? And Sanatana Goswami said, my dear Madan Mohan, he said, I'm an old man. I can hardly move. And whatever I have, I'm offering to you. Please accept it and don't complain so much. So Madan Mohan probably started to chuckle and said he had to eat that roti. And then Prabhupada said, but what is your value? And what is the value of the things that you have? It is nothing. Then he said that, my dear Lord, I brought this for you. I'm rotten and fallen. Please accept it. And then Prabhupada started to cry. And Prabhupada said, that will do. Don't be puffed up. Always remember you're dealing with Krishna. That is my advice to you. Thank you. So it's the mood of devotional service that changes our existence. If we're in the proper mood of devotion, and where devotion also includes that we know that this is an activity that is pleasing to Krishna, and I'm not doing it to get something from Krishna, because that's just illusion, because Krishna owns everything. I can't get anything and own it, because whatever I have belongs to Krishna. Even I'm supposed to belong to Krishna. What to speak of my belongings. If I belong to Krishna, then obviously all my belongings belong to Krishna too. And there's no time in the future, even when we go back to the spiritual world, we're going to own anything. Because everything there is alive and spiritual. Even in the spiritual world, everyone wants to belong to someone. Like the Manjaris want to belong to Srimati Radharani, have that sense of belonging, that everyone's trying to have that sense that they're the servant of others. That's what they're trying to develop, not to become anyone's master. Here everyone's trying to become a master, and everyone there is trying to become a servant. Even Krishna is trying to become a servant. because that's where the sweetest taste is, in loving service. So that development of loving service includes that we're not the proprietors, and it includes that we find out what actually the Master wants us to do. There, everyone wants to find out what's pleasing to others, and that's what they do, and they're expert at it. Then the result is that their loving service to Krishna increases. And Krishna is pleased, everyone's pleased by that development of a loving service attitude. Then then our consciousness becomes transformed, and then we can see, not only theoretically, but we can see practically how we should serve others. It becomes obvious because we become conscious of Krishna in our heart, and because he's in everyone's heart, he knows everyone's secrets. He knows them exactly what they want, what everyone wants, and so the devotee can serve everyone. Even they don't even have to ask for his service. He knows exactly what everyone wants and what would be pleasing to them. Like Lord Chaitanya, when he was taking prasadam with the devotees, he knew exactly what every devotee liked, and he'd tell his servants, give that devotee this prasadam or that prasadam, because he knew exactly what each devotee wanted. He didn't have to be asked. He didn't have to ask anyone. And that's what he was doing. That's what Krishna exists for. He knows everyone exactly what they want. Unfortunately, in the material world, we don't know what we want. What we should actually, maybe we know what we want, but we just, generally speaking, conditioned life, we don't know what's really good for us. We've been misled by others who don't know what they're good for, what's good for us either, or what's good for them. Therefore, Nite Vidu Swartikatim Hi Vishnu, people don't know that actually the best thing to get is Krishna. Darashyaye Bahir Artamanina. And therefore, they become interested in getting things that are lesser than Krishna, which is everything but Krishna. In other words, anything but Krishna, it must be lesser than Krishna. And therefore they're taking shelter of things that are not actually very helpful for their actual interest. And andaya tandira upagamanas te pisha tantra urudami vada, because they're following blind people. We've just been trained up to take people as important or as worthy of following, or as going to a very important goal, when actually they're all blind. That anyone who doesn't know Krishna as the goal is blind. Because whatever they seemingly accomplish will be lost at the time of death, and all they'll take with them is a reaction for their activities. Only if one serves Krishna can one become free from the actions and the reactions of material existence, and ultimately get the actual highest goal, which is Krishna and service to Krishna. Especially, well, that's... Therefore, one has to find out either Krishna or an actual bona fide representative of Krishna. Bona fide representative of Krishna also knows what Krishna wants. Otherwise, how can he be a bona fide representative? Because Krishna doesn't keep it a secret exactly what he wants. For instance, he wants us to chant Hare Krishna. He wants us to offer our food to him, etc. So, one who simply repeats what Krishna wants, then he becomes a bona fide representative. Not very hard. Prabhupada said, a father says to his child that this is a pencil. So if someone asks the child, what is that? He said it's a pencil, because he's repeating what the bona fide authority has said. So, to become a bona fide representative of Krishna, we simply have to repeat what he says. Then we become his representative. It may not be as powerful as one who's completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness, but it's a bona fide representative also. We simply repeat Krishna's message without changing anything, without being too creative. Then the result is that everywhere we'll look, our consciousness will change, and everything will become spiritualized. It's already spiritualized, but we'll just see the spiritual quality of everything. It's already there, just that our consciousness is covered and we're seeing something else. We won't gain anything. Matter of fact, we won't want anything, because everything, everywhere we look, everything we do will be perfect. Perfectly in Krishna consciousness. And that will be sufficient. Then we'll be completely happy. And if we're completely happy, there's nothing that we can desire to become happy. It's like Prahlad Maharaj, when he's offered so many benedictions by Lord Nrsingadev, Prahlad Maharaj said, no, I'm not a merchant. I don't want any benediction. If you want to give me a benediction, then please make my devotional service stronger and more steady. That's all I want. And therefore he said, Naiva dvijay paradaratya vaitaranyas tvavirya gayana mahamrita magnichitak soche vimukha cheta indriyaratan maya sukhayam varam udvatam vimudan. That, my dear Lord, that why do I need anything from this material world? Because whenever I chant your names, my mind merges into an ocean of spiritual happiness. And I'm completely happy and satisfied. But, so che vimukha chetasa indriyarata, but I'm observing that all these fools and rascals looking for happiness, they're creating this horrible situation with no thought that actually the real goal is love of God. And therefore I'm working to help them, to liberate them from these material misconceptions. So that we have to become convinced of. If we're convinced about that, then our life will surely become successful. And if we're not convinced about that, then we simply have to struggle till we actually become convinced about that. That's if we can't learn by just hearing, then hopefully we can learn by experience. Otherwise, we'll have a hard time in the material world, especially in Kali Yuga. The lessons will become even more difficult as time goes on. Anyhow, I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Wouldn't that be nice to wake up one day and you were like in a, everything was unlimitedly, everything was beautiful and Krishna was everywhere and everything was pleasant and beautiful and pleasurable. And all your senses were just enjoying everything, every sight and sound and touch and everything. And when you walked, you didn't walk, you danced. And when you talked, you didn't just talk, you sang. And when you breathed the air, it was full of nectar. Wouldn't that be nice? You wouldn't have to eat prasadam because everything would be prasadam. So that the residents in the spiritual world, they're all enjoyable and tasty. You wouldn't have to eat them, but just by associating with them, you get unlimited pleasure. And everything we did, we'd be carrying Srimati Radharani in our heart and feeling the same desire to please Krishna as she does. We'd have the same blissful desire to please Krishna. Remember him in the same way she does. Realize his unlimited beauty, his unlimited qualities, his unlimited happiness, the same way she does. Unlimitedly. Wouldn't that be nice? We love everyone the same way she does. Any questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, you said so nicely at the end about this, but is this possible to experience also in material world, like in temple, or with eating prasadam that was offered to the Pancha Tattva, or listening and dancing when you are in front of Pancha Tattva, or is just this impossible?
Anywhere. There's nothing but there's nothing but spirit. We're not actually in the material world. We're in part of the spiritual world. It's just we're in our consciousness has been imprisoned. That's all. And if our consciousness is free, then it's just as good as being in the spiritual world.
Now my question continues: if you experience this, often you hear from the devotees who are long time in process that you're in Maya, that this is impossible, that you're just pretending to be joyful, dancing in front of Panchatattva or tasting the most wonderful prasadam you ever taste.
Well, if it's an illusion, it's a good illusion.
So this is bona fide?
Bona fide, yeah, if you think it's an illusion, it's a bona fide illusion. Probably, even if Krishna didn't exist, there's nothing better than what we're doing. Even if the whole thing was, Krishna was just part of our imagination, where we're doing the best thing that you could possibly do in illusion.
But many times you can see devotees like dancing in front of Prabhupada and feeling such an ecstasy, jumping. Are they pretending to jump for Prabhupada?
I know, it's good exercise to jump. Even if you're pretending, at least you'll be healthy.
Thank you for elaborating so nicely for us.
Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande.